I want to
Absolutely.
say this is perhaps one of the most common threats or the most common thing that I'm going to dare to say that maybe 99% of engineers deal with when you go from college.
Hello friends, this is Wilson at the Neutral Access Club. In this video, I interview a friend and colleague with a beautiful immigrant story and journey to becoming a mechanical engineer and today a project manager. From his struggles, he's found a passion for helping others, and today he's a mentor, growth enthusiast, and content creator to help engineering professionals succeed in their careers. He has a YouTube channel where he shares content on effective communication and leadership and how to knock doors beyond an engineering degree. In this interview, he shares his journey along with some tips on how to improve communication skills, how to deal with imposter syndrome, and how to avoid small talk in networking settings. Please join me in welcoming Alex Isidro. All right. Alex, thank you for joining the Neutral Access Club. I'm really excited that you're here today where I get to put you in the hot seat. You already do a lot of YouTube and create a lot of content for a lot of young engineers, particular, and you're an engineer yourself, so we already know that. So I'm really excited that I get to interview you and learn a little bit more about your experience as an engineer, your journey as a person that creates videos and different content. To get us started, I wanted to ask a icebreaker question. This is somewhat the format of a Toastmasters meeting. I am part of Toastmasters, and I like to ask an icebreaker question to just get into the flow of the conversation. So, my question to you is
Mhm.
if you could be an ice cream flavor, which one would you be and why?
Ice cream flavor.
Yes.
Let me think about this for a second. I would be a combination of flavors.
That's okay. That's still an ice cream flavor. Why are those?
I would pick, majority would be, I'm going to do the swirler with chocolate and vanilla,
Okay.
and I'm going to put Oreo on top of it.
Okay.
And that's my ice cream flavor.
That's
I'm
it.
gonna
All right.
mix the Oreo. I don't know how to even call it, but that's the ice cream flavor that comes to mind. Maybe because that's my favorite and I'm biased. But
Yeah, I like now that you mentioned that being an ice cream flavor reminds me of Ben and Jerry's and
yeah,
how creative they get with their ice cream flavors. So it could just be like basic ingredients: chocolate, caramel,
yeah,
and whatever, and they just call it something like my overnight dream or something like it's
yeah.
something it's really good marketing, and I really like it. But I like to ask these questions to kind of gauge the personality of the person. So
Yeah. So
I'm glad.
what's your take on my personality now that you know my ice cream flavor?
Well, do obviously you do like chocolate. You put double chocolate in the ice cream flavor, and that tells a lot that you kind of like something that is sweet but also a little bit sour. And you also like you said vanilla, so I'm not sure what I can draw from. By conclusion, I can draw from vanilla, but it's good. At least we have something in common, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Um,
What would you be? What kind of ice
what would
cream
I
flavor would you
be?
be?
Okay, so I really love banana ice cream. I don't know if you had it before, but
Yeah, I
it's
have.
it's
Yeah.
it's as basic as just like a banana blended with vanilla ice cream, and
Yeah.
then I would do some dulce de leche. So that to
Ah,
me,
listen to this.
that just blended on a waffle cone, I'm sold.
Yeah.
So it's that would be my ice cream flavor.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, to get us started, how about you tell us about yourself? How do you get to where you are now professionally? You're a mechanical engineer. How do you get to where you are now?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invite. I'm very, very delighted to be here, and I've been watching your content. You're a civil engineer,
Yes,
and I'm a mechanical engineer. There's some overlap in those majors, especially in the beginning. I remember taking statics and mechanics of materials and deformable bodies, and
dynamics, fluids,
yeah,
probably. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So a lot of good memories, honestly. And the more I learn about specifically the structural engineering side of civil engineering, I'm honestly really amazed by a lot of the things that structural engineers can do. So deep admiration, really excited. So yeah, that's one of the things that I've been kind of researching in the background just for fun.
Hmm.
I was watching a video on the San Francisco, the Golden Bridge, and how they made it, all the structural engineering behind it. So really, really amazed. So anyway, so long story short, I like your content, so keep
Oh,
doing it and inspiring and motivating people.
awesome. Thank
So when it comes to my personal story, it's funny. I didn't always, or I almost dropped out of engineering. Before that, I almost didn't go to college. So my story is not like, oh, I always wanted to be an engineer, and that's exactly what I wanted to become, and I became one. My story is something along the lines of I was inspired by my dad originally. He's a geological engineer. Such funny. I was just talking to him a couple of days ago about how he became an engineer, and this was in the era of oil drilling in Peru. There was a golden era of oil drilling where
you.
Shell and all these big companies were in Peru. So he became a geological engineer. I was talking to him, and one of the correlations that we made was how oil in Peru back then in the 70s was almost like the tech industry in Silicon Valley. It was kind of like that. It was booming, it was bringing a lot of jobs. Engineers in that industry were getting paid a lot of money. So he was my inspiration when I was much younger. I grew up in Peru. I don't know if you watch some of my videos, but I talk
Yes.
about this sometimes because many times you don't. Let me keep going with my story before I get into these details because I
I
know
will
that we
make
have a
sure
lot
to
of.
bring you back there.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
worry.
yeah. So I grew up in Peru in a low income household. I grew up with my mom, my grandma, and in 2000, I was always good at math and science. I was terrible in discipline. I was that kid in high school that is always annoying and cracking jokes and getting into trouble with discipline. And but I was always good with science and math. But a little bit more detail on where I was when I came here to the United States. I was in a place. It was in a time where my mom passed when I was 10 years old,
Mm.
and that changed my life completely. My dad, who I referred to a few minutes ago, he is actually my godfather, and he and his wife, who is my godmother, all my wife's my mom's sister,
Hmm.
they adopted me when my mom passed in 2000.
Oh.
And so when my mom passed, I went through all these years when I dealt with a lot of loneliness. I didn't have much guidance. And it was very key in the way my mind works nowadays. I like to think of myself as very driven, resilient. And that's because life just made me that way in order to achieve further and keep growing in my career. And so from the time I was about 10 years old up until I was 16, which is when I came to the US, I was living with friends, I was living with some family members, going from home to home. And during that time, I started dealing with a lot of what would you say? I was getting in trouble, let's put it that way. And I was hanging out with the wrong people, I was getting into trouble on the streets. And so had I stayed in Peru maybe a couple of more years, I don't know what would have happened with my life, but luckily, at 16 years old, the adoption papers and everything to come to the United States went through. And when I came here, my circle changed. The way I was thinking about life changed when I was in Peru. I didn't want to go to college, even though I was good at math and science. I was about to throw out all the good skills that I had. I just wanted to go straight into the workforce, which there's nothing wrong with it. But in Peru, which is a developing country, you have to be very well connected in order to get a good job. And so my chances of being where I am today would have dramatically decreased had I stayed in Peru. So when I came here, I saw I didn't want to go to college, right? I saw my sister going to college. My other sister went to college. My brother was working on it, and my surrounding and the people that were influencing me suddenly changed. So I shifted my mindset to okay, I guess I'll just go to college. And so I started studying English and putting myself through community college. Eventually, went to Virginia Tech and has Many engineers already know the struggle and all the discipline that you have to put yourself through, all the mental strength that you developed, the sleepless nights, the stress, dealing with difficult personalities, meeting the deadlines. So I went through all of that, just like everybody listening, and just like you, of course, and finally graduated in 2012. Graduated with my mechanical engineering degree, and I came here to the Washington D.C. area, and I got into the defense industry and
Mm.
started doing in the defense industry. Once you get into it, at least this has been my experience. There's a variety of different fields that you can focus on, and I am extremely grateful that I had a chance to always run into people that were supportive, people that would offer me opportunities, people that will open doors for me. And I started focusing on engineering technical concepts. I was doing a lot of lubricant analysis. I was dealing with maintenance on mechanical equipment, diesel engines, gas turbines, compressors, pumps, basically things that mechanical engineers generally deal with. After that, however, I started pulling myself away from the technical focus of my degree. And then I focused more on research and development, meaning more on the project management side. So I was a government employee for a couple of years and then left the government, became a contractor. And that's when I started exposing myself to it was like a whole new industry when I joined the submarine world. It really was an amazing shift because up until that point in 2015, when I shifted industries, I was only dealing with, I never dealt with submarines. I didn't
Mhm.
know they were black either. I remember the first day in my new job, I was replacing somebody that had a lot of experience. It was this retired captain in the Navy with 30 years of experience. He retired, and then they hired me, a 25-year-old that just graduated college, looking to fill in those shoes. So I go into my first day, and I was talking to this guy, Mike. I remember, like, I will never forget him. He looks at me and says, "Okay, Alex, what do you know about submarines other than the fact that they're black and they go underwater?" And I looked at him and I said, "Oh, they're black." And so he just started laughing. I had no idea. So it took me a lot of personal development, not just on the dime of the company, but I had to learn a lot about the new industry. I was buying books on my own in order to educate myself because I didn't know the language, the lingo, the different parts, different systems, the different components that go in each part of the submarine. So long story short, I joined the submarine world and I was there for about 3 years doing research and development slash project management. And eventually now I am working with other type of naval equipment for the Navy. And so, yeah, and now I'm doing more, again, less technical stuff when it comes to project management slash risk management.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of water under the bridge. And I'm grateful to have been exposed to a variety of different fields because it gives me a very wide scope of the opportunities for engineers. And that's one of the things that I share in my channel, that when you graduate with a mechanical engineering degree or civil engineering degree, whatever specific niche you choose when you're in college, it doesn't mean that you are going to end up doing just that. Your job title does not depend on the type of engineering degree that you get. And you're always going to be able to pivot. You're always going to be able to go into new industries, make more money, or go up the corporate ladder. So that's one of the main messages that I try to deliver in my channel. So that brings us to today, which we met through YouTube.
Yeah, that is really interesting that you're sharing that. And I, first of all, I really appreciate your honesty and sharing about your story. Normally, if you ask somebody in a professional setting, let's say, tell me about yourself, they go into XYZ. I did this, I did that, and I'm doing this now. They don't really go through their story, and I think it's really important to share your background
Mm,
in all environments, not just in a personal environment with friends, or uh,
right.
you go to a birthday party or something like that. That's where normal. That's the kind of setting that you would normally share your background on, but in a professional setting as well, because he literally, just by hearing you talk for the past couple of minutes, I got a really great picture of how you went through all these hurdles from not having parent figure throughout your teenage years, and then eventually moving into the U.S., shifting completely your mindset and
Right.
being surrounded the people that are doing the things that you wanted to do, and that really tells a lot because you completely redid your life. You were running into trouble back in Peru. You came to the U.S. and you were like a brand new person. That's the beauty of taking an opportunity when you see it. And I'm really glad that you actually took it that way. And now you're in a great place right now, doing all this great stuff. So I have a lot to unpack, and I wanted to. Uh,
Looking forward to it.
no, I really truly appreciate your honesty because especially you have a very beautiful immigrant story, and normally I see a lot of um, friends that come to the U.S. They have the opportunity to come to the U.S., move to the U.S., and despite whatever the struggles they had back in their countries, which is usually the case for a lot of immigrants when they come, they get to attach themselves to the dollar, and they see an opportunity to work, and they're like, oh yeah, I'll make $300 a week and that's enough for me, because they're still
Mm,
thinking of what that dollar converts to in their country. So in my country, for instance, a dollar is 55 pesos, which you can pretty much eat in a meal with a
mm,
drink. So if you come from the Dominican Republic and you start earning in dollars after living your entire life in the DR, you think, oh yeah, I could just get a job, I don't have to work the extra mile. And
right.
it's nice that you share that, because I went through a similar thing when I moved to the US. Didn't know English. I had to go learn English. I also started a community college, and while I was attending a community college to learn English, I took all the remedial courses that you can think of, even the ones with math, because I did not understand math in English. I was good at
Yeah.
math in Spanish,
Tell me
and
about it. Yeah.
when I come to the US and they ask me to solve a math problem only with words, I'm like done. So I
Did you
took
know?
even.
Did you know? Did you know what a slope was?
No, I don't
That was
remember
my
that.
biggest struggle too. Now that you mentioned that,
Yeah.
I generally believe the reason. So going back to my story, and
Hmm.
so just really quick,
Yeah.
when I mentioned that I almost dropped out of college
Hmm.
earlier, not college but engineering itself, when I
Engineering
came
and stuff.
here,
Yeah.
one the biggest hurdle I encountered was not thermodynamics. It was not fluid mechanics. It was not mechanical design for mechanical
Hmm.
engineering. It wasn't even the writing or presentation. Believe it or not, it was calculus. Calculus
Really.
1 specifically. And for many people, this may be a little incredible
Hmm.
and unbelievable, I mean. But calculus 1 for me was much harder than calculus 2 and 3 and differential equations. And going back to your point on learning math, on learning calculus, taking a math class without knowing the language, I believe, and I was thinking about this a couple of months ago, I think it's because it became that much harder because I was learning the language going through it. I didn't know what a slope was. I had to look up a lot of terms in on Google, and it was very difficult to learn the technical lingo while learning English itself. So that was
Definitely.
another difficulty, compounding the difficulty of calculus itself.
Yeah, and that's an experience that a lot of international students go through when they
Mm,
come to the U.S. for their education. I have a lot of colleagues that you will hear them talk, and you were like, wow, these people are very smart. But then when it comes to doing a test
yeah,
in school, they would not excel because there's that language barrier that keeps us from either understanding the problem that we're being asked in an exam, or answering or delivering it into
yeah.
it. So it's sad that we have to go through that, because that
Hey,
puts it that puts us at a disadvantage for sure. So I started community college, and I went through all my remedials, and I eventually transferred to a four year school.
yeah,
And my first year GPA was a 2.4,
nice.
and a 2.4 that out of four, I think of
Yeah,
four.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So and no, 4.3. My school used to do this weird thing, 4.3, because they have the A plus, so the A plus
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
would go up a little higher. And I almost quit engineering as well because I thought that engineering is not for me because I was not performing well. And when you come from an environment, I was maximum excellence in school, in
Mm.
high school, and I did really well in my community college. Then I come to a 4 year school where it's supposed to be like real engineering. You get to
Yeah.
focus in a particular major, and I don't do well. I started questioning myself. Is this for me? Is this do I belong to this space? Do I should I continue with engineering? And it's good that you're bringing light into this because it's the reality of a lot of engineers who come to the U.S.
Yeah.
Either for the undergrad. It's an international student, or a lot of them come do their undergrad back in their respective countries, and they come to the U.S. to do a master's, to have the
Yeah.
opportunity to become a professional engineer in the US. And they had to go the extra mile in every corner possible
Yeah.
because of that language barrier.
Yeah.
So
It's
it's
part of the
good that
process. Yeah.
it's part of the process, but it's good that
Yeah.
it's a good learning experience because
Yeah.
you actually get to develop that technical language or
Right. Yeah.
jargon, I should say, that is used in a professional setting. So um, yeah, it's interesting because we come from different countries, different backgrounds, so we do have that similar story in a bit. Obviously, not as hard as you. I consider myself blessed now after hearing your story, but everybody struggles in their own way, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that you
Yeah.
found.
Everyone's got
I'm
their own. Yeah.
I'm glad that you found the silver lining out of that whole situation, and now as an adult, you understand that what it meant to
Yeah.
you to go through that experience.
You have
So
to. Yeah.
yeah, so you mentioned you started to you started your journey as a YouTuber, in particular, and creating content, uh, to bring perspective into these issues that you went through. How what was day one when you said, okay, I'm doing this for sure? How was that? How did you come into thinking about it, your target audience, and uh, what kind of content you wanted to create?
Oh boy, this is actually it has this is a deep question, and I'm going to tell you why. So I graduate engineering school, right?
Hmm.
This was 2012. I was about 23 years old,
Yeah.
and I started my new job. Everything was new, making good money, had a girlfriend, family, friends. So basically, there were a lot of new things that were happening in my life, and I was very, very happy, like good things happening. But then over time, the hedonic treadmill kicks in, and all the good things, or not the good things, I take that back, all the new things that started happening in my life, then now I'm used to my lifestyle, right? Now I'm used to hanging out with my girlfriend. I'm used to having the family dinners, which is all great. I'm not complaining at all. But one of the things that I realized was, okay, what's next? I'm like, what do I do? So I went through this phase when, after about a year and a half, maybe even 2 years after I graduated college, I started looking a little deeper into, okay, what is next? What is it that I can do? I know that I can do more. I know that I can make an impact. I know that I can help other people. And I've always had this itch, or deep down, I love helping people. I generally do love encouraging others and asking questions, and not necessarily giving them answers. Many times when we're in conversations, but just asking different questions in different ways to help them kind of make their path a little less difficult than it needs to be. So I started going through this whole, I started reading a little bit more books. I started looking into psychology and kind of looking within and see what else I have to offer. But the funny thing is that I didn't just go straight for engineering, because I was thinking, you know, engineering is cool and all, it's great. It gives me good money. I love my coworkers, a great work environment, but it's not something that I wanted to foment, at least at that time, to open a YouTube channel. Or I was into fitness, and so I want to talk about fitness. Or I was thinking, oh, now I like playing the guitar. So I went through this testing phase of a variety of different interests, of playing the guitar, becoming a fitness trainer, opening a business. And so I started kind of going through the iteration process,
Hmm.
and I started sharing content on Instagram and Facebook. And if you actually do a little bit more research on me, you'll find some accounts somewhere around, like the that were part of the testing phase. Um, anyway, so long story short, in about, I want to say 2018, I started a YouTube. a YouTube channel. I think 18 or 19, something along those lines. So this was after going through this whole testing phase. I was thinking, maybe I can just share my engineering stuff. Like, I mean, I've built all this knowledge and experience, and I know how to overcome all these difficult classes. And before I got into engineering, the reason why I didn't get into it originally was because I didn't think it was an audience. I didn't think people were interested in learning about engineering because I was thinking engineers are probably already like they don't want to learn about engineering. Like they just want to get their work done, meet their deadlines, and go on with their lives. Which is true for a lot of engineers. They just get it done and then go on. But how about the people that really do want to learn? How about the people that are interested in, hey, what other career paths are there for engineers? And not to mention also the students that are coming behind and they're seeing, okay, what else is out there? So I wanted to shine a little bit of light onto what I went through and the research that I was doing and all the different interests that I put myself through. So in 2018, I opened an engineering channel
Mhm.
and it didn't do well at all. I think I posted like two, three videos and like not many, not actually no one watched. I think I got like two, three views, and probably that was me just rewatching the video. So
In different browsers.
yeah, exactly, just different browsers. So I like put the private the videos, and I was like, you know what? There's no audience. I knew it. There's no audience. So I just moved on with my life, focusing more on business and mental health, and I started sharing content on all of these. So and then I noticed Jake Voorhees, and I noticed Jake, right? The other
No.
bigger. So he's also a civil engineer, by the way. He has a much bigger YouTube channel. He hasn't posted a
Mhm.
video in a while, but I saw him, and I also saw Zach Zach Star, the other big. I think he's probably for engineering students like one of the biggest engineering YouTube
I
channels.
feel like I know nothing now.
Oh no,
I don't know these names.
I
I'll
mean
make
those
sure
are the
to look
ones
into it.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean Zach at this point he's got over 1 million,
Oh,
and
wow.
Jake I think has got over 100,000 subscribers.
Wow, that's good.
So I was thinking, oh, okay, well, there is an audience for it, right? So I
Yes.
started just sharing my thoughts, and originally I was just coming up with all these ideas, and I was thinking I'm just gonna make a video about it. I started just kind of not preparation at all. Sometimes I would just like pull out my phone and say, hey guys, like, you know what? This is politics in the workplace. Like, this is what's happening, blah, blah. So I would just run my mouth for like 5 minutes, no structure whatsoever, which maybe we can get into this a little later, which a lot
Yes.
of it I realized hurt my YouTube channel. But anyway, so that's what got me started. And eventually I started getting better. I started having a little bit more structure approach.
Hmm.
I started doing a little bit more research. And that's how my channel eventually started growing very, very slowly. And I mean, still growing now. And I was telling you a little earlier before the interview that the goalposts never, like, you never get there, right? Like, when you have when you have 3 subscribers you want 10, when you have 10 subscribers you want 100, when you have 100 you want 1,000, and then you want 10,000, and so it just never ends. And so that's how I started with YouTube and sharing engineering
Hmm.
content
Hmm.
itself. And so I started getting feedback from students and young engineers themselves saying that things were helpful. So that's just kind of like what kept me going
Yeah.
and sharing engineering content.
It's really interesting how you start by telling us, okay, I tried these different things and I tried
Yeah.
to determine what stick, what didn't stick, and that's how life should be, trial and error. And we learned this in school, but then when it comes to applying that to real life stuff that we're
Yeah.
going through, perhaps switching careers, perhaps starting a side project or a side hustle, perhaps starting a YouTube channel. We
Yeah.
always think that we had to have everything planned and ready to execute, and we only have one shot at doing this, and that's it. That
Yeah.
we put all these mental barriers before even
Hmm.
getting started, and I went through that myself with YouTube because I had this feeling that I needed to be a certain person or have an X amount of knowledge before I can start talking about these things that I've gone through. And you mentioned how you at first thought that there was no audience, but realized that there's actually an audience. And I in my own channel, I have all sorts of mental barriers. Like, you have no idea. And now I'm getting more comfortable with the idea of actually creating more content, reaching out to people, interview them the way I'm doing now with you. But you have to think about who was that person, that engineer back in
Hmm.
college, and try to answer that person's questions. I'm pretty sure that when you were a young engineer, you had a lot of questions about, oh, what career options do I have? Can I
Yeah.
go into this? Can I go into that? What can I do with my mechanical engineering degree? And when we think about what is our target audience, we always think about people who are perhaps at our same level, our colleagues, or I have
Yeah.
colleagues that I went to school with. And you think of, oh, that's your audience. In reality, your audience can easily be that person that you were 5 years ago when you were a sophomore in college, about what kind of questions you had, and try to answer those questions, because there's a lot of engineers in that position wanting that advice, that guidance, that
Right.
coach. uh, I don't know what's the word coaching as. I don't know what's the word I want to say, but
Mentor, coach,
mentor. Yeah, that's a
guide.
better word.
Yeah. Exactly right.
That it's able to answer those questions from there. And I've seen from your content from LinkedIn, you invite people to message you, and that's really good, because it gives people the opportunity to, hey, I have a real human that can help me answer any questions that I have. And you just said you don't necessarily provide them the answer, but at least you help them brainstorm and do some deep thinking to find the answers on their own. So I really applaud you for that. I appreciate that you're doing that for people like us, people who are still going through a similar journey that you went through. So it's
Appreciate
really
that.
nice.
Yeah.
And I'm curious though, when it comes to confidence and feeling comfortable in front of a camera.
Yeah.
Did you have any mental barriers? Do you perhaps think, oh, I have to improve my communication or speak better English as a second learner,
Oh, yeah.
as
My
a second
camera
language?
presence in
Sorry.
the beginning was just terrible, absolutely horrible. But I'm glad I did it. And I made a post on my YouTube channel a couple of days ago in my community tab. Oh man, I wish I could show you the development of my camera presence, not just camera presence, but honestly, in general, communication
Hmm.
and presentation skills. Because my YouTube channel has helped me become a better speaker when I'm giving presentations at work, even if it's through Zoom and it's only audio. It gives you more confidence. It allows you to structure your ideas, your thoughts before you go into the interview. Excuse me, the presentation. When I first started my YouTube channel, my first video was about I had just started a fitness transformation. My YouTube channel originally was about fitness,
Hmm.
and I entered a contest, right? And one of the tasks from the contest was you got to give an introduction to your fitness journey, who you are, where you're joining from, and all this jazz, right? So I put the camera up, and it was just me with my Virginia Tech, with my maroon shirt, and I had a pencil with me and a little notepad where I had all my stats, like my waist size and all this stuff. So I was talking to the camera, and I'm like, "What's up, guys? Welcome to my channel. I am super excited to be here, and my name is Isidro." And so I go through this whole introduction, and now looking back, I was thinking, "Oh man, that was that was pretty bad." But it was pretty bad with respect to where I personally am today.
Right.
And so I went through this whole journey on, you know how that goes. Like the more you do something, the better you become at it. But also, it's not just about doing it. It's also analyzing and looking at where you can improve. Eventually, I got a tripod. Eventually, I got a little more comfortable on camera. Eventually, I got a better mic. Eventually, I got lighting and a better setup. And what would you say? But it was more about the repetition, and on top of that, learning and reading from other people, from other YouTubers. One of the things that I suggest people do when they're going through a development process is, okay, look at who you want to be like and what is that person doing. And people are not going to like this maybe, but just copy them. And then eventually, through quote unquote that copying process, then you are going to develop your own style. I remember I want to say maybe. Do you know Avicii, the DJ?
Yes.
Okay, so he passed in 2018, right? Rest in peace.
Yes. Rest in peace.
So in one interview he gave a long time ago, he said he's a great DJ, right? He has a lot of original songs and whatnot. So he said in his story in this interview, when he first started, he was just copying people. He was copying Tiesto, he was copying other very famous DJs, and he was just looking to make a copy of the songs that were already popular. So, and then he was saying through that development process, through that repetition of him just copying other people, eventually he started adding a few adjustments and changes to the songs that he was already familiar with. So, and then eventually that led him to add additional enough adjustments that the style became its own. And so that's how he got started. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel in the beginning stages. You can just copy somebody that you look up to, and then along the process, because you have your own idiosyncrasies, you have your own personality, your own style, then you are going to become your own you, right? Like your own Wilson, your own Alex, and anybody that you see on YouTube. That's just my personal
That's a
insight.
really good insight. It just brings me back. I don't know if your grandma, I don't know if you had that grandma relationship, but I would hear about my grandma saying, because my grandma passed away when I was about 3, 4. She used to
Sorry to
say,
hear that.
and this is a very common phrase, but she would say it in her own Dominican way. It would translate to, you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with. And
Mm,
many times we think of this idea on a physical
right.
aspect, like your 5 friends you hang out with. Yeah, that could also be true, but it could also be the 5 people you listen to, the 5 people you watch, the 5 people
Yeah,
that you talk
like
to.
that.
And
Yeah.
it could just be, people you watch on YouTube, people you watch on TV,
Yeah.
any of those mediums where you interact with 5 people one way or the other. That's exactly who you become. And it's really good that you mentioned, go ahead and see what they're doing. If that's what you want to become, there's already a formula that will take you from A to B.
Yeah.
It's not going to be linear from A to B, but at least you're going to have those paths that will make your path unique from A to B. So
Exactly.
it's really good that you're bringing perspective into this, and in a more engineering concept. So let's say you start your office gets a new software. What is the first thing you do? A tutorial. Tutorial is literally copying things
Yeah.
that it's already be done, and that's how you get to develop the skills to use the program itself. So it's really good that you bring
Although
insight in,
if you're like me, you probably just, I'm sure that a lot of engineers can relate. You can just jump into using the software and then learn the hard way,
right?
even though you have the tutorial.
Yeah. Some people do that. I at the beginning, just like you have
And
to
then you
follow
go
them.
back to the tutorial though. Like you mess up, you're like, ah, I should watch
Yeah,
a tutorial.
go back. Yeah, it's that's exactly how it is
Oh,
for anybody that is an engineer and gets to use those
yeah.
engineering programs. I would imagine that with your YouTube creating content, your job, your
Yeah.
family, your daughter. How do you balance relationships? How do you I'm sure you have friends as well. How do you
Yeah.
dedicate area into your relationships, into your health, into networking and so forth, while also having all these responsibilities, professional and personal?
My approach may be a little different than some people that like to say, oh, you got to schedule, you got to block time, and you got to have every single piece of the day blocked out, and otherwise it doesn't happen. I developed a person, for me, I've developed a process or quote unquote a system where I run off of habits. When it comes to obviously, I devote time for my family, my wife, my daughter. It's not like at 5 p.m. Let's also put this in perspective because I'm not running a $100,000 or a $100 million company, right? Like, so let's put this in perspective because many people may think, oh, like I watch this influencer and he says that or she says, at 5 p.m., like I'm done with work and then it's my family time. And then at 9 p.m., I go back to working and I'm not, my life is not, and I don't want it to be like crazy. My life is very simple. I have a family. I have my other family, which is my parents, my siblings, and I run my YouTube channel, my business, and I have work. And when it's time to work, then it's time to work. 9 to 5, 8 to 4, 10 to 6, whatever it happens to be, generally. And then I like to work out. I deeply believe that it's it's something that I'm grateful I've been able to develop the habit of just going for a walk or going to the gym, exercising, moving, and it gives me a lot of mental clarity, and it helps me with my mood and the many problems that I may be dealing with. So I make time for that.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, afterwards, I take care of my dad responsibilities. And nowadays, up and around 10, 11 p.m., when my daughter goes to sleep, I start working on my business and side projects. And at 3 a.m., I go to bed. So that's kind of how things are
3 a.m.
nowadays. Yeah, 3 a.m.
Oh,
Yeah, that's when I
you get
generally
up
go to
at what,
bed.
7, 8?
Now I get up at 8, 9,
Yeah, yeah,
and then do the same thing the next day. And that's kind of how my life is running nowadays, because I have my daughter. She's a newborn, and anybody that has a newborn
yeah,
knows that you perform your daily duties on their schedule, right?
yeah. It's good that you mentioned that because I you'll see often in social media about how your life should be. Your life should be X, Y, Z. That you should have each hour of the day planned, and you hear this a lot in the productivity and professional development space,
Yeah,
where we have all these gurus that they tell you how you should be, and sometimes you don't have the same kind of responsibilities that they have. So it's
yeah,
really hard for you to attach to that sentiment that they're sharing, and
yeah.
uh,
I mean,
it's okay
that's
to have our own
stressful, man.
class.
Like I've seen some, yeah, like you say, like some productivity gurus. It also have to take into account your goals, right? Like I want to grow slowly. I mean, I would love to grow fast. Don't get me wrong. Like you want to grow your business, and you want to impact people, and you want to help others. You want to grow your social media, your TikTok, Instagram, like YouTube, like all these things, right? And you want to make money. But I understand that, hey, I have responsibilities, and honestly,
Mhm.
like all the priorities in my life. Like I've my daughter's a priority, my wife is a priority. Spending time and sharing times with my parents, with my siblings, nephews, like that's a priority to me. So I schedule things around it, and from 10 to 3, 11 to 3, whatever it happens to be, I work on my business and planning for the future. I mean, I do have goals, don't get me wrong, but let's say that I have other things higher on the priority list, because they just mean that much more to me.
No, and that's respectable, and I really
Yeah,
admire that you have that clear in your head, and you're able to make decisions accordingly. I personally would think about being a young engineer, how you perhaps
whoa,
think that you have to get from A to B really quick, and as a young engineer, I come out of college, I start working as a professional, and I try to accelerate my career. And when I say
hmm,
accelerate, I say it in the way that I thought that a year one I should know this, a year two I should know this, and I try to plan out each year
yeah,
because that's pretty much what you're told. You pretty much come out of school, you're told you should go get a master's, you should continue doing professional development and everything. And then when you're in a situation where you make mistakes at work, you start questioning
yeah,
yourself again. You start questioning um, whether you know engineering, whether you don't know engineering, whether this is for you. And as a result of that, I started to not enjoy the process of actually my engineering
mm,
development, thinking
yeah,
that I have to get to a certain level. I should know this, I should know that by a certain amount of careers, and that leads to a lot of issues. And that's something I wanted to talk to you about because I see you sharing content about that and how their young engineers add themselves an unnecessary amount of stress and pressure when they make mistakes. And particularly, I want to touch a little bit on imposter syndrome. And
yeah,
it's it's a if we define imposter syndrome, it's essentially the psychological thought that you feel like a fraud. That
right,
some point anybody's gonna come and knock on your shoulder and say, "Hey, you are a fraud," and that leads a lot into a lack of confidence and self sabotage, and it all comes to that expectation that either the profession and industry has of us,
Yeah.
and we were not catering to that, perhaps can start, making us feel these issues. And I'm curious if you ever felt that anywhere along your years as a young engineer.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to
Absolutely.
say this is perhaps one of the most common threats or the most common thing that I'm going to dare to say that maybe 99% of engineers deal with when you go from college and you go into the workforce. I remember one day I was walking to my townhouse apartment where I was living, and I was in the I was it was this was towards the end of my senior year, and I was thinking, oh man, I'm about to graduate. Uh, I need to take this fundamentals of engineering exam, and should I get my PE? Like, I don't know. So all these thoughts started coming to my head, and I was thinking, oh
Mhm.
man, and I have to go to my work, and I already had a job. I was very, very grateful that I was able to lock in a job before
Mhm.
graduation. But I had this thought of, okay, what happens if I don't perform well? Am I going to get fired? I started thinking more in terms of like, okay, what's the worst case scenario, right? Like you have this imposter syndrome. Yeah, sure. Okay, but why is that? What's the worst case scenario? Are you going to die? No. Are you going to get fired? If you mess up horribly, maybe. If you make the company lose money, if if a building collapses because of you, which is extremely unlikely because you have many different engineers working on it, which is something that I didn't know, right? And when I was a student, like you don't know, you think that you're just going to have all this power in the beginning stages, and that's absolutely not the case. In the beginning, you're just helping.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I started thinking about this, and one thing that I realized along the years is every time I went to a new environment, you go through the same process of imposter syndrome. And one thing that my conclusion is, okay, I went through imposter syndrome when I graduated from college to my first job. From my first job to my second job, which was in a completely different industry. And from there, also within that industry, I switched fields. So, and every time you go through it, like imposter syndrome is there. But then not only did I notice where it started, I also noticed when it went away. And so I started thinking, okay, what makes it go away, right? I started doing some research and looking at psychologists and the whole philosophy or psychology behind imposter syndrome. And I realized, okay, imposter syndrome happens when you are actually growing, when you're stepping into uncharted territory, when you don't have confidence yet. It doesn't mean that you will not get it. It doesn't mean that you will not build it. It doesn't mean that it's not going to go away. It just means that you're stepping into a zone that is new to you. And that's great, right? Because that means that you are exposing yourself to new experiences and you're growing and you're becoming that much better off in the end. But the transition process is always going to be uncomfortable. You're going to go through it when you go from a freshman to college to the workforce. And I was watching a video a couple of days ago on imposter syndrome, and this very, very successful businessman, I think he had a company that was worth like 100 million or something. He still felt like he had imposter syndrome. So it never goes away until it doesn't excuse me, imposter syndrome doesn't go away for good. It comes back when you enter new territory, and it goes away temporarily when you become more confident, when you become good at your craft, when you start learning your duties, when you start working on whatever job it is that you need to do. So it's just something that I've learned to overcome and deal with. And once it comes back, I'm like, okay, I just know what I have to do. I just have to learn the craft and learn my skills and sharpen my skills and learn what I need to do. And that's kind of, and it goes away because
Yeah, and
your confidence starts building, right?
yeah, I absolutely, and it's great that you mentioned that when imposter syndrome happens is because you're getting outside of your comfort zone, and it's a good
Right.
thing. And I know it's hard to internalize that this is actually a good thing when you're going through it, because
Yeah.
you pretty much think that everyone around you and your environment is conspiring against you, and it's hard. It's a hard truth. It's a reality of many engineers, especially
Yeah.
coming out of college, that they perhaps got A pluses in all their design courses in junior and senior year. They come into the workforce thinking they know how to design concrete, they know how to
Yeah.
design steel, only to find out that after they submit a couple of engineering packages and their managers review it, there's a lot of mistakes and a lot of things to improve, and it's really hard to see that other engineers go
Yeah.
through that, and a lot of people that are starting in a new craft, like you mentioned, is
Yeah.
goes through that because it's part of the learning process. But when you are a young engineer that's starting in an office, you're perhaps the only young engineer, you're perhaps the only person that's learning how to be a professional and learning so many things left and right, and you don't have other people who perhaps are going through the same thing. And you, let's say you have the confidence to actually speak up about it and talk to your manager about it, your manager probably tell you, yeah, I went through that, but you don't believe it. You don't believe all the people went through that, because that's how it is. That's how humans are. We think
And
our
the
problems
other
are
thing is
only
like
us.
you shouldn't be talking to your boss about it.
I mean, it depends the relationship that you have with your manager, because it
Right, right. I
it
agree.
depends on
Yes,
that
I
relationship.
agree. Yeah, yeah,
If you had the opportunity to speak up
yeah.
about it, I mean, you wouldn't say I have imposter syndrome. You could, it could be as easy as, hey, I have seen that you provided a lot of feedback about my
Yeah.
work lately. I wanted to see
Right.
how you
Yes.
can get a little
Which
bit
I've
more.
done personally. I love
Right,
doing that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's how it should be. If your manager gives you some feedback on an engineer
Hmm.
package, or gives you a vague statement about it, get it specific with them and say, "Hey, tell me exactly what I need to improve," and then develop an action plan to improve on that. Because part of it is obviously the insecurities that we have, and those are hard to deal with. But at the same time, getting practicing self awareness and getting real with what's going on, the actual situation.
Hmm.
It's a little bit of a mindset, thinking about positive things about it, thinking about the positive side. You're growing, you're learning, and it's a process to get from an engineer coming out of college to actually being confident as an engineer. So it's good that you mentioned that, and to bring perspective into that it's normal. It's normal for
Yeah.
engineers to go through this. A lot of people go through that. I was at a SEOC event last week, Structural Engineers Association of California, and there was a presentation about uh, the importance of professional networking.
Mm.
And it was a whole 45 minutes presentation perhaps, and in the last 3 minutes the presenter goes, and I wanted to talk to you about something that's very common for young engineers, and that is imposter syndrome. She literally had no agenda about it. You could literally tell there was no slides. She just starts talking about it in the last 3 minutes, and you the moment she mentioned that, you had the audience raising their hands left and right. People 25 years into the industry, 15 years into the industry saying, hey, I'm 25 years into this industry and I still have imposter syndrome. I still have imposter syndrome. I still feel that, I don't belong to a certain space. I still don't believe and accept my accomplishments as they are.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what imposter syndrome is. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that people with a lot of years of experience, they still go through the same thing whenever they go into a new environment, a new space, that they're not confident on their knowledge, but they know they'll get there. It's something that everybody goes through that. So I'm glad that
Yeah.
I brought that up, because you definitely had a lot to share about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then yeah, I'm just gonna leave it there.
No,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good. Now, I wanted to ask you, as part of your personal and professional development journey, do you come across some books that you probably read, or some podcasts you listen to every day that you want to share with us?
Yeah. I have a I've had a
I
lot of
see some books in the back, so that
yeah, I've
goes.
had a lot of influences, different people.
Mhm.
I want to say a couple of that come to mind are when I was going through, I want to say when I was like 26, 27 years old, I ran
Mhm.
into Dr. Jordan Peterson. So
Okay.
he's a clinical psychologist. I'm not sure if many people have heard of him, but so he's one of the people. A couple of books that I have from him, 12 Rules for Life. So it just gives you a general guideline on, okay, what is worth doing with your life? What are the things that you should do? What are the things that you should not do? Just keep basically giving you general guidelines on how to live a good life, whatever good means to you.
Yeah.
Another person that was a big influence in my life was Robert Greene, who's a writer. He wrote The 48 Laws of Power. He wrote The Laws of Human Nature. He wrote also daily meditations like the 33 strategies for war. Now, this guy, he's influenced me more. I'm not sure if I should say this, but I'm going to say it anyways. So, over the years and throughout my life, I've developed this. I am well aware of how dark people can be, and I don't shy away from seeing not just the good, but also what people are capable of. So these books, The Laws of Human Nature and the 40 Laws of Power, are great insights on how people with on let's put it this way, on exploring the dark side of humans. It was inspired on Machiavelli, also Sun Tzu, like the Art of War, also Carl Jung, very famous psychologist, who was also one of my influences. Well, still is obviously, because I mean, once they give you a concept or an idea, then you kind of start applying that to your life. So Dr. Jordan Peterson, Robert Greene, uh, also Carl Jung, psychologist. I have this deep interest in psychology. I've also learned from Alfred Adler, another psychologist. And so some time ago, I was thinking, why am I interested in psychology? And I want to say maybe some engineers can relate to this. Psychology explains to you and why how our mind works and why certain things happen, why we behave certain ways, why we think certain ways. And one of the things that I personally like to do is I relate that to physics in the sense of, okay, physics tells you why and how things happen in nature.
Mhm.
And psychology, for me, it's almost the equivalent, but for our mind and our behavior. So because I'm naturally a curious person, one of the reasons that's the reason why I started going down the psychology rabbit hole and finding all these influences that have helped me live
Mhm.
or improve my life.
Yeah. Hold on. Give me 1 second over here.
Yeah.
Uh, no, and it's good that you share that because we are often thought that we're always expected to because we are engineers. Our interests are only in engineering and anything related to science. Well, I think
Yeah.
psychology is considered science. I'm not too sure about that,
It is. Yeah.
but it's interesting that you, as a mechanical engineer, you have so many diverse interests,
Yeah.
and I would say that you're probably one of the very few that I see with such a diverse range of interests in general as an engineer. Because I do have friends that we talked about things outside of engineering, but when you're having a conversation with somebody, a normal person that is not an engineer, what do you talk to them about? Like those are the things that I always
Okay.
talk.
So go ahead. Go ahead. Well, I have something to say about
No,
it.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say it's one of those things that okay, how do you find something in common with somebody that is not an engineer? Especially if you, I
Hmm.
mean, you probably are in that position where you read about different things, you acquire knowledge in different aspects of your life and understand how humans think, why they think a certain way, which helps with your relationships and emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
How did you, find something in common with somebody that's not an engineer?
I don't talk to them about engineering.
Okay.
So it's one of those things that you learn along your journey.
Hmm.
I have this book called Emotional Intelligence, literally called like, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Anyway, so
Oh, I read the book, by the way. Yes.
oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah. So we have that. So it's basically a book that teaches you about emotions and how your emotions shape your behavior for everybody who's
Hmm.
listening. So I want to say part of it is learn. Majority of it is learn, but also I am someone that has developed the skill of being okay with meeting new people. I mean, I wasn't always like this. I mean, I was mostly just keeping to myself. When along the years, I've learned, okay, I'm just meeting new people. It's not a big deal. They're not gonna kill me, hopefully, right? But so the point is, you start learning. You start if you pay attention enough, or you start developing a set of questions or the type of questions that will get people to start a conversation. Like, yes, I may not, okay, I can talk to an accountant, a psychologist. And to sum it all up, really, at the end of the day, you can literally talk to anybody and establish a conversation by simply showing interest in their field. simply showing interest in what they have to say. Ask them about their life, ask them about their career, ask them about their, I mean, just very basic questions on how their day is going, how was their weekend, like, oh, you went to a football game, oh, who was playing in that football game, or like who did you go with, who won, like just really these basic questions that allow you to get to know the other person. And we humans, we like to talk about ourselves. So if you are able to ask questions about someone, the person starts opening up, then you can literally talk to anybody. You can talk to executives, you can talk to other engineers, non-engineers, tech people, like it doesn't matter, because you're asking them about who they are. So that's really at the end of the day what how I talk to non-engineers.
No, yeah, that you nailed it. People
Yeah,
love talking about themselves. I do. I'm sure you do.
everyone does.
I'm
Yeah,
interviewing you now. You're probably
yeah,
enjoying that
I'm
as
loving
well.
it.
So,
I'm loving it. Yeah.
so it's good that you mentioned that because
Yeah, no.
at all those questions that you just said, things to ask people would lead to very deep conversations one way or the
Yeah,
other. And we'll avoid the concept of small talk. How
yeah,
normally you would comment to someone, especially in the office, just you're crossing around the hallway or the kitchen. What is that common question you get? How are you? Right? And
yeah,
that is such a basic question because there's not really a great answer to it, or a deep answer I should say, because you most likely answer, I'm good. How are you? Like that's it. And then the person's going to say back to you, I'm good too. That's it. Like there's no opportunity to actually go into a more elaborate answer.
yeah.
And just changing the
Depend.
format to change that question instead of asking how are you is like, hey, how's the highlight of your day? They can talk
Yeah,
to you about anything in there. It's more of an open-ended question because I can talk to you if you ask me that question. I can talk to you about a project I probably did really well. Perhaps my mom told me that she's feeling better, or I'm really excited for my game tonight that I'm going to, soccer or something like that.
yeah,
And it can come in every direction, and then you
hmm,
can use that information that you get, obviously showing interest, um, and an interest in learning about the person. You can start a
yeah,
whole conversation about that information that they give you initially. And this is particularly very important when it comes to professional events, networking events, where we go to conferences, where we go to happy hours with all the engineers in the professions. Engineers usually struggle with this concept of actually having a conversation, approaching people at these networking events. And I'm curious if you have any experience with that and any tips that you can share with us about how do you handle professional and networking events.
yes. I do have experience going to professional events. Generally, it depends, right? Like, are you with a group? Are you going on your own? Um, One of the best ways to, or that have helped me just talk to people, is if I see somebody that it's just hanging on by herself or himself. Like you don't have to think about it. Just go and talk to them. Hi, my name is Alex Isidro. Like I'm a mechanical engineer working for this organization. Like, how are you? Nice meeting you. And the first time you do it, it's gonna drive you crazy. You're gonna be a nervous wreck because you haven't had the chance to do it in the past. But if you go in with the intention of not taking from people, but in order to, if you go with the mindset of helping others, if you go in with the mindset of, oh, who are you? Or how can I help? If you shift that mindset, that's going to help you feel more confident. It's going to calm your nerves, your anxiety. And there's techniques to do this, right? When it comes to calming your anxiety, one technique that I've learned recently, and this was for given presentations, but I mean, I'm sure you can use it for any type of situation.
Mhm.
Where you take three deep breaths. I learned this from a neuroscientist. You take really three long, deep breaths. You go, and then you release slowly. And you do that 5 times. Oh, this try if you try it. Oh, it's gonna calm your nerves and anxiety like really
Okay.
quickly,
Yeah.
in like in seconds. Anyway, so you can use this technique if you are going into an environment where your anxiety is just way too high. But that's generally the way I approach networking events. I go into this myself. Um, it's going to take a little bit of courage, of course, to get the ball rolling. And again, it's the same. The formula is the same. You go introduce yourself and you ask them about who they are and do they know anybody in the. in the event. If they don't, then just keep asking them about their career. Or also, the other thing that helps a lot is sharing a little bit about yourself. Like, you don't always have to just get the answers. I mean, relationships, conversations are two-way streets, and if you are able to share a little bit about you and basically give a leeway for the other person to chime in. Like, for example, if you're new to this is just an example that came to mind. If you are new to the area and you go into a networking event, you can simply say, "Hi, my name is Alex. I'm new to the area. I just moved here. I'm a mechanical engineer. Nice meeting you." And the person is most likely going to say, "Oh, where did you move from? Like, where do you come from? Like, where did you work before? Like, where are you living nowadays?" So basically, it gives them a little bit of curiosity and a little bit of a threat for them to just pull, right? And at the same time, it's very helpful to read the other person. Is the other person up for a conversation? Is the other person ready to hold a conversation with somebody else? Maybe he or she's waiting for somebody else. So it's just all about just things that you learn along the way. But that's generally what I like to do when I'm in networking events. And I mean,
Yeah.
it works. You get the conversation going, and that's how you network. You build
Yeah.
relationships.
A lot of wisdom right there. You started, saying that uh, we have to go into these events with the mindset of providing something and being a
Mhm.
help to others. And normally, you think of networking event, as an opportunity to get something,
Yeah,
perhaps a job, perhaps a connection, and I think that's what makes it challenging, and that's how a lot of people get nervous
yeah,
because they think that they have to put in this image and this uh, you know presentation for them to get that thing that they're after, and
yeah,
that's how you get nervous. And I think that going as a group, or perhaps somebody that you know, a colleague that is probably in the same city, you can invite them like, hey,
yeah,
let's go to this event, and then that person becomes your wing person. You don't know if that person introduces you to another person, that makes it
yeah.
even easier,
Exactly.
and whatnot. Or you can go back and forth. You both approach one person at the networking event. You can, take the lead in different opportunities. One, your colleague asks a question, I ask a question, or we both provide feedback or provide an output. We share about ourselves. So there are a lot of techniques that you can use when it comes to networking events. And
Right.
not take things personal, especially when you mentioned that the person may be waiting for another person. Those are a cue
Yeah.
that you can get. And you might think, oh, I'm not impressing enough, I'm not interesting enough, but it's just like the person has their mind
Yeah.
and in another place. They're waiting
Yeah.
for that friend that they're so excited to see. But when we don't see another person reciprocating our conversation, we always think
Yeah.
the worst. That's just how human
Exactly. Yeah.
nature is.
If the answers are short, not really sharing much, even though you're asking questions,
Yeah.
then that's the first cue. Like, all right, it's time to move on.
No, and it's good that it takes a strong mindset to think it that way, because you can just say, hey, I think I'll give you the opportunity to go approach somebody else and meet all the people at this networking event, instead of just like trying to feel bad for the person not engaging. And it
Yeah.
is what it is.
Exactly.
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens. You just have to take it along the way. um,
For
Alex,
sure.
thank you so much for sharing your story. Do you have any final thoughts, any questions that you may have, anything you want to share with us?
No, I just wanted to give encouragement to all the young engineering professionals and engineering students that all this struggle that you're going through right now, all the sleepless nights, maybe you're dealing with imposter syndrome, maybe you have a deadline, maybe you just need a little bit of guidance. Always invest in yourself and just know that the struggles of today make us stronger tomorrow. And just as long as you're willing to work hard, not take things personally, take responsibility, bet on yourself, and your future is bright. And
Yeah.
again, don't forget to always improve and don't stay behind.
Yeah, those are awesome words. I'll make sure to link your channel there because your awesome content is relatable to a lot of engineers, to any person going through some sort of personal and professional development journey. So I'll definitely make sure to link that in the notes. Alex, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing your growth in your channel. I already seen a lot of it already.